record. Hello to those of you who are not tuning in live. My name is Marissa Badgley. I am the founder of Reloveution, and this is our July 2023 Power Hour with our power speaker and expert, Mario Jovan. And he is going to be sharing his expertise and wisdom and love with us on the topic of the intersection of mindfulness and leadership. Mario, please take it away.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be talking to everyone for this hour. I am actually at a coffee shop just because I was getting sleepy at home. And I was like, ooh, all right, I'm at the transition my space. And my dog, I don't know, he was barking too much. So I transitioned to this space. I love it. I love that you already shared where you're from. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but I live here in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to talk about like mindfulness as it relates more specifically in my work, and I'll share even more about my work, but as it relates to supporting leaders of color, because that's where my work is specifically kind of like geared at. And then everyone can also receive some insight based off of what I'm sharing. All right, so let me share my screen. And so it's mindfulness tools to retain and support leaders of color. And this is a big piece of my work. I'll just, again, share who I am. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. I am a plant dad. I love plants. Super dope to have over 50 plants in my house. If I did do this at my, if I had recorded this at my house, you would have actually like saw all of these plants in the background. So if you have any plant questions, I'm here to answer those as well. So we can talk about mindfulness and plants because there is the intersection between those two as well. I currently live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I began my education career with Teach for America. Currently, right now, I have an organization called Messy Roots, which I serve as the culture consultant for men of color. I help them to become coaches. A lot of our coaches come from the education world. And I love really thinking about different curriculum and resources and skills to help aspiring and current coaches become better. And so part of our coaching work is that we do focus on mindfulness leadership. And so the outcomes for today is just like learn the foundations of mindfulness leadership, understand and analyze the guideposts of mindfulness and its impact on racial justice, and then how mindfulness coaching skills help to retain coaches of color. And so I know that this is, you guys gonna sit back just a little bit, but based on the outcomes, I just want us to give ourselves 2 minutes to reflect on how do we want to show up in order to gain insight from this space based off of the outcomes. And so I am a rule breaker, so I hate giving rules because I don't want people to break my rules. So I give you a permission slip. And so you're gonna write your own, you're gonna think about your own permission slip to enter into this space. And what does that look like for you? So I'm gonna again give you 2 minutes. I'm gonna go back to the outcomes and just allow you to think about, okay, what will I need in order to really receive all of this information that will be shared today based on the topic. So it's 2 minutes to start now. You don't have to write in the chat. You just be chilled. Then we'll come back in 2 minutes. I'll be on mute. All right, so we're gonna continue. I want to start off with mindful leaders, and start off like what that looks like, so that we're able to really understand the definition of like what I'm discovering. So the beginning part will be about like we'll focus a lot on like definitions, so that therefore, when there's questions, we'll have more clarity. So mindful leaders incorporate the skills. Great, sorry. All right, so mindful leaders incorporate the skills of mindfulness coaching, the coaching skills to be able to serve members of their team. Your role is to help establish the individual team culture where members are able to achieve their goal with least burnout and stress as possible. You know, the stress and burnout is not only the leading cause of folks leaving the the workplace, I said workout, but the workplace, but it also creates low engagement or the quiet quit. So during the pandemic, like, we constantly heard about like this quiet quit, right? Like how people were just like burnt out. Even in a conversation I was with that I was in yesterday with other coaches, and talked about how like people are just like unhappy with their work, they're unhappy with their job, and that really creates a lot of stress. It creates a lot of burnout in folks, and oftentimes we're not able to really focus on the true problem and focus really on like the true cause and create solutions, so that therefore folks are able to be less stressed and burnt out. So we just keep people just in that mindset. It's like, oh, let's just do like a gene day, or for in education, let's just do like a pizza party. And yeah, people will be relaxed that day, but they're not gonna continue along in that unless we truly address the problem. And for leaders of color, there's an additional burden, definitely since George Floyd, and even before that, coming into work culture spaces and receiving microaggressions, and different things that add to our stress based on historical context, add so much to why even leaders of color are even more burnt out, and even leave and have that quiet quit even more. And I don't think we're having a true conversation about that. And hopefully these resources that I'll provide today will give people some insight to help folks support leaders of color, as well as really think about like, what does it look like to go further and making sure that like we can retain them, because we need that diversity. And that's why it's important, because the world is getting more and more diverse. And if we don't have leaders in these spaces, then we're truly, truly doing ourselves a disservice. Well, leaders of color in the spaces, we're doing ourselves a disservice. So why mindfulness? And so we know that mindfulness helps to decrease stress and burnout, which in 2021 was the leading cause, specifically in my work, while educators left the classroom, specifically educators of color. And so I literally look at that data. I literally look at that specific case study with educators. And if you know, specifically with my previous work, I had supported male educators of color. We originally, when I first started this work, probably over 8 years ago, there was 2% of male educators of color in the country. And now it's 1.3% male educators of color. So it has gone down, right? And so when I was working in that field, we were able to, in our organization, we were able to retain 98% of male educators of color. And part of that was the mindfulness work we was doing, and the other part of that was the coaching skills that we used to empower teams, and specifically leaders of color. What I love about coaching is that coaching gives leaders of color the opportunity to be in the driver's seat. And oftentimes we hear a lot from leaders of color is that that leaders of color are often receiving information from folks and don't necessarily have the opportunity to talk or opportunity to voice their opinion, right? And so when having a coach, and specifically oftentimes a coach that looks like them, we are increasing the opportunity for coaches, for leaders of color to be less stressed and decrease that burnout. So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness means to be present in the moment, undistracted. It implies rest of the mind, in this natural space of being, simply put, mindfulness is being aware or undistracted or undistracted. And I got this from the creator of Headspace, and this book is really, really good. Meditation and mindfulness. Really, really good book, true insight, and it speaks specifically often to people of color, because oftentimes, for some strange reason, mindfulness started obviously in Eastern culture, but oftentimes we are people of color are often absent in this conversation. And so what I love about this book is that it definitely does include us. Mindfulness or racial justice helps to decrease stress and burnout for people of color. So let's discuss mindfulness and racial justice. This is Dr. Rhonda McGee, and if you have never heard of her work, please go learn about her, listen to her studies. A lot of us hear about John Kabat-Zinn, who is super amazing at what he does. And they have a YouTube video where they're speaking together about mindfulness and racial justice and how it can impact, more specifically, people of color, leaders of color. And so she has a book called The Inner Work of Racial Justice. And so we cannot discuss racial justice without also discussing mindfulness. And as it relates to folks of color, we can't even do mindfulness if we don't talk about racial justice. Like it goes literally hand in hand. The reason being because mindfulness is about, again, the definition is about being present and aware. The first thing that you have to do is be aware of yourself, aware of where you're coming from, aware of who you are, your own background. Just because I'm a Black queer male does not mean that I represent all Black queer males, right? And so because I'm from the North, I was a former educator, which education oftentimes can be a little bit more accepting of queer identity more than corporate. And so maybe I have a different experience from a Black queer male who was in a corporate space that worked at, I don't know, like some bank or something like that, right? It's just different. And so that's why mindfulness gives us the opportunity to be more present with self, acknowledge our where we're at, acknowledge our wrongs. And she has a great case study because she's really a law professor, right? And so it's like, what? You're a law professor, but like you're this leading person to talk about mindfulness as it relates to people of color and as it relates to racial justice. How? Well, if we're also going to talk about a lot of the systematic things that happen here, specifically in the States, just in case there's some folks that are out of the country. If we're going to talk about systems here in the States, then we also need to address those that prevent people of color from being free to be their most authentic self, to live unapologetically. And oftentimes we don't have that opportunity, right? Because of what's happening systematically. And so mindfulness gives us the opportunity to address both things. We have to do mindfulness and racial justice at the same time. And this is what it does. I call it BET. This is kind of like what I do to help leaders of color when they participate. And my coaching courses, I love to create acronyms. So it builds resistance, the stamina to do this work, ethical ground. Let me go back to building resilience because I want to just hit on that just really quickly. I love to be resilient, and at the same time, I don't like the word resilient because it's like, why do I always have to be resilient as a person? Why do I always have to, be resilient as a woman or as a queer person or a person with disabilities, right? Like, why it could be that alone can be a burnout, right? But however, mindfulness does help to build that resilience. So I think oftentimes I look at it as a double-edged sword, and then it definitely is like, yes and no. Ethical grounding, energize and build our capacity to understand someone and recognize how we are all connected. And then it deepens awareness within self and others. Again, you cannot do this work of like being in this social space without recognizing where you're good at, recognizing you still need to develop your character flaws, your habits, all of those type of things, right? So me being a Black queer male, I still have to be aware of how I show up for women, more particularly Black women, and just because certain laws, quote unquote, don't impact me, they could impact a community that I care about, right? And so I have to understand where I'm currently at to go beyond my work, beyond who I am, in order to create like this racial justice movement. So I want to give us a mindful moment. I attended the J. Shetty School. This is one of my favorite quotes to talk about, because it really, to me, focus on just like who we are as people and how we can just truly appreciate the beautiness of like individuals and people without taking advantage of them. So what is the difference between like and love as a student? The teacher responds, when you like a flower, you pluck it. When you love a flower, you water it daily. This frequently cited dialogue illustrates one of my favorite ideas about love. We are attracted to beauty, we long for it, and we want it for our own. This is the flower that we pluck and enjoy. But attraction, like a cut flower, eventually withers and we discard it. When attraction develops into love, it requires more care. When we want to keep a flower alive, we don't cut it and put it in a vase. We give it sunlight, soil, and water. And it's only when you care for a flower over time, doing your best to keep it alive, that you fully experience its beauty, the freshness, the color, the scent, the bloom. You notice the delicate detail on each petal. You watch it respond to the season. You find joy and satisfaction when a new bud appears and feel a thrill when it blossoms. I love that. And like, it's like, what are your thoughts with that? And then how would you look at this from a racial justice lens? And that's a thing that I always like to, I love looking at this quote and thinking about it from a racial justice lens. Because it helps us to think about, man, like how often we have more specifically as I think about it, like Black talent, right? Put it in his face. Oh, this is great. Instead of like nourishment. Or like we pluck diversity, right? Let me give action. I don't want to go too far. But we pluck it and this is beautiful instead of actually growing it and actually believing that this thing can create like if you keep it and you grow it, it creates a beautiful garden of diverse different flowers. I always tell my coaching clients when they're beginning their coaching experience, and they be like, man, I want to coach like so-and-so, or I started today, I want to do this. And I always say, well, if you were a flower, or sometimes they even use tree, but if you was a flower, what would you be, right? Somebody say, okay, I would be a sunflower. Okay, good. So a sunflower has the ingredients and the instructions in that seed in order for it to be a sunflower and not a rose, right? But if the sunflower seed specifically just focus on, man, look at that rose.
Right.
It will literally be like, oh my God, like I want to be that rose and not focus on the qualities that make that thing great, that makes that thing beautiful, that makes that sunflower like the best, right? And some people like sunflowers, some people like roses. I can't stand roses. I like sunflowers, right? And so why not be what you were created to be? And all of us, I consider our hearts to be a seed. So all of us are born with instructions to be our most authentic self. And if we focus on something else out there, outside of us, John Kabat-Zinn, he has a book that says, wherever you go, that is who you are. And I love that because it helps you to think about, man, like if I just stay right here, is the idea that like what I need is right here in this moment, in this space, in my heart, then I could literally just be okay with like that. My heart has the instructions for me to grow and blossom, to be my most best authentic self. And I don't have to look at anyone else outside of that. That is my mindful moment for you all. So I created these 10 guideposts. I'm gonna share my 10 guideposts with you all as my final piece. Unfortunately, and fortunately, because you can ask questions. This is the best part. I love the dialogue. So what I did was through years and years of like studying mindfulness for the past 8 years, mindfulness certifications and getting my yoga certification and education certification, I looked at what John Kabat-Zinn was doing with his different uh, thoughts on mindfulness. He created like 8 different mindfulness steps. So for Messi Use, we created 10. And how we utilize this is that this helps us to truly, truly become our most authentic self, and it helps us specifically for everyone, right? So this helps everyone. But when we geared it towards diversity, equity, and inclusion. I love the quote that like when you teach girls, you teach everyone, right? And so like same thing when you provide something for diversity, it helps everybody, right? Everybody can gain from it. And so like these 10 guideposts helps everyone to think about, well, where am I stressed and burnt out at? And how can I actually like grow and become better? And so like letting go, for example, maybe I'm having a hard time like letting go, right? And that's where I'm burnt out. That's why I'm stressed. And so like, what are some of the things that I could do in order to let go? These are some of like the coaching questions that like I help my clients to be able to ask themselves, right? Like, what are some things that you need to release to be present at this moment? And what are you holding on to, right? Like, and those things help people to acknowledge, like, man, this is why I'm burnt out. This is why I'm struggling with X, like, and I can actually pinpoint it and not just go get ice cream for the day to make myself feel better, or as a leader, throw a pizza party for my team because like, I want them to just feel good. We're going to get to the source of that. Another thing that I have as well is a burnout audit. And so everybody complete. So in order sometimes like if I can't just look at that document and know that I actually know where I'm burnt out at, right? Based on the guideposts, I can actually also take this assessment, this audit, to help me recognize and pinpoint actually where I'm actually doing well at in mindfulness, so that I'll get stressed less and not be stuck in it. What do I actually need to grow at, right? And these things are ever changing. It's never going to be like, oh, I'm going to do well in all of these things. Like that's not the things. Like you can't. Like it doesn't happen. And so like you literally. Pause share. One more thing. You literally can utilize these skills to like actually think about how do I want to show up, right? And so like this is why they're color coded as well, because I help even clients to coach themselves out of it. I'm not going to be there every time, right? Like, what does that look like? And so the final thing is just my contact information. I'm really big on like how do we provide opportunity for leaders of color, one, to utilize coaching skills to be able to grow themselves and to grow individuals and people, but I'm also good on thinking about how mindfulness can help us to decrease stress and burnout. So this is my contact information is miamarjovan.com, as well as also mrreach.org. And I'm excited about questions.
Thank you so much, Mario. So before I end the recording, I'm wondering, could you just run through those guideposts one by one? It was up really, really quickly. You don't have to give detailed explanations, but I know that people were like, that's like a concrete thing. So could you just share that screen again and read through them one more time?
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
And so hard work is the one that we actually come up with. It's about that seed that I just talked about earlier, and being your most authentic self. Acceptance is being able to acknowledge who you are. Beginner's mind is always continue to learn. Generosity is that giving time, energy, attention to self-compassion, giving to others, gratitude, appreciating where you are now. Letting go, I talked about that one. Non-judging is a big one that many people experience. I'm going to pinpoint that one just really quickly with non-judging. is not about we judge as people, just naturally we judge. What I love about what John Kabat-Zinn talks about with this is that non-judging specifically is acknowledging when you are judging though, and knowing where to place that, right? Because it can be something positive, like, oh, I'm judging, maybe this might motivate me to actually do something good, right? Or am I judging to stop somebody from being able to achieve X? Non-striving, always having patience is a little bit self-explanatory, and trust. And I could also, yeah, I could share these. I could drop these where you are.
Thank you so much.
No
So
problem.
thank you. If you are watching this back, we will put Mario's contact information in the notes on YouTube, and everyone else stand by for our Q&A session. Just 1 second.